welcome back to another episode of the Catholic Buzz podcast. We're so happy that you're joining us today as we continue to talk about so many various things that we like to talk about here on the Catholic Buzz. My name is Father Daniele, and I'm always joined by Josh Sullivan.
Hello.
Over here on my left. Josh, how's it going?
It's going good.
Yeah, good to see you. And over here we have Matt Van Milligan. Matt, welcome to you.
Hello.
Josh, did you know that Matt is a world champion tennis player?
Yeah, I heard.
He's a world champion tennis player. You knew it. Right?
I should have known when you asked earlier that you had some malicious intent.
I had some when I was asking you, what sport did you play? Yeah, he's a world champion tennis player. And but he hasn't played tennis since when? How many years has it been?
Years, a decade at least, yeah.
He hasn't have to because he was world famous. He only, only had to play for his 20s.
You see where I'm going with this, eh? Do you see where I'm going with this? Yeah. Because today we're talking about people. Now you see.
Yeah. Okay. I can't walk into a room and introduce myself as a tennis player.
That's right.
Yes, okay.
See, he's smart.
Yeah.
And people at home are saying, what the heck are they talking about, right? Yeah. But today we're talking about people who say they're Catholic, right? But don't practice their faith.
Yeah.
Like I'm Catholic, but haven't seen the inside of a church in a long time. So we're going to talk about maybe why people do that, some tips on maybe how we can help people come back to the church. Just like Matt, who hasn't played tennis in over 15 years, he can't call himself a world champion tennis player. You can't. I'm sure you were pretty good at tennis, but that's the point. Just like if you're not practicing your faith, is it okay to call yourself a Catholic? Because that's what we see so much today, right? If you look at the demographics, you look at the census, right? You say, wow, there are a lot of Catholics here listed on the census. You say that's a good percentage of our neighborhood, of our city, of our community, of our province, of our country. Yeah. And then you think to yourself, where are these Catholics? Like, where are these Catholics? Because they're certainly not inside of our churches.
Yeah, and I think that in itself is the big problem, right?
Yeah.
Is because when we're looking at what it takes to be Catholic, one of those things is Mass on Sunday. So we'll talk about a little bit more about that, but that's like one of the biggest things. I think this stems from a place of culturally Catholic or paper. I call them paper Catholics all the time. You're Catholic on paper. You've been baptized Catholic. And so that seems to be the piece of paper that you carry around as your identity. So, I'm Catholic when it serves you. So when it's to talk about the Pope or in the negative or the positive, when it's to talk about the Catholic Church in the negative or the positive, you pull out that little piece of paper that you were baptized Catholic. So I'm Catholic, so I have a right to say this. But as soon as it's unpopular to be Catholic, then you hide that paper away, right? Like the Catholic Church.
I don't practice anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I don't.
It's so true. When unfortunate things come forward, you have so many people who say, well, I don't practice my faith anymore, right? Because it's cool at that point to say that. But then you're right. There are certain times when people just use it. I was thinking about getting your kids into Catholic school. You have to show your baptism. Oh, of course.
Become a Catholic teacher.
Of course, we're a Catholic. Yeah. Show your baptism certificate to get a job, in the Catholic school system, or like I said, to put your kid into school. So there are opportunities where people do pull out that paper, and say I'm Catholic. But here's the problem. Being a Catholic is not just something on paper. It's not just technically yes, Matt, right? By the virtue of baptism, people are Catholic. Yeah. Like you've been baptized into the Roman Catholic Church or one of the other rites of our church validly. You've been baptized, and so you've been welcomed into the fold. You've been welcomed into the family of Christ. You've been baptized priest, prophet, and king like everyone else, right? But there's such a life after baptism that I think today it's almost become culturally accepted to just be a non-practicing Catholic and still identify as a member of the Catholic Church.
I think this again. It's cultural. It's a cultural Catholic, not like. It's almost like a race. It's almost like it's culture. It's like where I would say I'm Irish. I've never been to Ireland. My last name is Sullivan, and therefore I identify as Irish. Mm-hmm. That in that way I'm Irish, but I am no way actually an Irishman that has been to Ireland. That has, you know what I mean? it's the same kind of idea there. But I would still proudly call myself an Irishman, having the last name Sullivan.
Right.
But when it comes to actually being Catholic, it's a little bit more than that. Your parents choose to be Catholic, and then you choose to be Catholic. It's not something you're born into necessarily. It's something that you take on vows and adopt into your life as a personal thing.
That's right.
And that's the problem.
Like, if someone were to say to me quickly, like, what does it mean to be Catholic? Like, if you had to name something that would identify you as Catholic, I would say, well, number one, it's to be one with Jesus and his church, and to be one with Jesus and his church. And people might say, well, I love Jesus, and I don't have a problem with the church, but it's more than that. If we do love Jesus and his church, then we're taking seriously our responsibility to be in relationship with Jesus and to be an active part of his church. Jesus doesn't say, go get baptized, see you when you die. There's so much more in between. It's like that he calls us to. And so lots of people will say, what's the difference? I love Jesus. Who cares if I go to church? I pray at home. I'm not so much religious as I am spiritual. You hear all these excuses that, unfortunately, so many people just accept today. When I hear those excuses, you kind of say like, okay, number one, those don't make sense, right? But so many people just be like, oh, okay, oh, so you're spiritual. Great, good for you. Like it's like what the heck does that even mean?
Yeah. Well, and even that you're talking about like the certificate. People will hold up the certificate, or like that's their their
this is my bus pass to get in. Yeah.
But it's like you think about when you get certificates. Otherwise, it's like it's an achievement. It's like, okay, I've reached this benchmark. But like in the church, it's not a destination. It's not an endpoint. It's an initiation. It's an initiation for mission, especially when you're talking about the combination of baptism, confirmation, and moving onward. That like a Catholic is someone who is, and like you're right, like initiation into the church is some claim to Catholic identity. But
sure, if
you want to be fully Catholic, it's an initiation and an engagement in the sacramental life, in the life of the church. And if you're not involved in the life of the church, that idea, like faith without works is dead. That like, show me your piece of paper, but like if that's not accompanied by works, if that's not accompanied by active engagement in the work that the church is doing, you have very limited claim to that identity.
So if I had to say to you, Matt, what do you think? Is someone who's baptized Catholic but never practiced their faith afterwards, is that person Catholic?
Yes and no. They are initiated into the sacrament. Exactly. But like I would actually think about that the other way around, because that's my experience. That it's like I was involved. I was a Christian before I became Catholic, so I was kind of Christianity and Christ were important to me, and I was committed to pursuing that to whatever end. But like that ultimately led me to, a recognition that, no, I needed the sacraments of initiation. I needed to, be properly initiated into the church itself. So it's like I have this, this life or this, an attitude towards, like leaning towards kind of the sacramental view of life, but that finding its fullness, in active participation in the church.
It's sad, like you're talking about the fullness of the faith. It's sad that people will just accept this low bar name, like Catholic name, like, oh, I'm Catholic, but not want the fullness of what it means to be part of the Catholic faith, right?
It's because it takes, I think it's easier. It's like a life insurance policy. Does that make sense? Like you sign your name away. Now I have this life insurance policy I don't have to think about again until I die. You know what I mean? And it's like I've got life insurance, and that's the way people treat it. It's not necessarily the case, but it's the way that people treat it. And it's harder to maintain your membership. It's harder to pay your dues every year, if you will, or every week, if that's it's harder to go and live the lifestyle. First of all, it's not easy.
Sure,
especially when you have young ones. I mean, if people are out there listening to this and you have young ones in the church, and bringing them to church. Two of us have had young kids, or still have young kids in the church right now. One of us has had young church at every mass that they celebrate, I'm sure. But like, it's not easy to bring young children to the church. We know that. It's not easy to get to mass every single week necessarily, depending on the stage of your life and everything else. it does take sacrifice, but that is a sacrifice that you do make for your identity in the church. It's God knows where your heart's at, and getting to Mass and those sacrifices to get there is part of what it means to be Christian. Because sacrificing the little things, like just getting up on a Sunday morning to go to Mass and getting your kids ready to go to Mass, and then spending the hour of trying to make your kids not scream, that kind of stuff. That sacrifice in itself leads to better benefits in the later years. First of all, as your family, as well as your kids. If you're raising your kids in the church, it gives them that stability and that family and the community in Christ in the church.
I would say that our generation, I'm talking about you and you and me, we're all around the same age. Like, our generation is predominantly lost, right?
100%.
I would say that they're not in the Catholic Church. I would say generation underneath us is not in the Catholic Church. The generation above us is mostly not in the Catholic Church, and so, like, when you look back at what the heck happened, like what happened when you have people in their life, people always say that, well, the church is full of older people. I would say the church is full of faithful people, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter about their age. But what happened to our generation, the one above us, the one below us, the one below them? Well, I can't help but to highlight, back 30, 40 years ago, this attitude of it's okay to do whatever you want. Like, God loves you no matter what. Because that was the answer people gave for so many questions that people fail to understand why it's important to what the answers that Jesus has, what the answer the church has. And it just seemed that the church didn't have these answers to questions that people faced, right? And it didn't make it important. It was like we don't even need to ask. God loves us. That's true. God does love us. But there's so much more. Like, it's just like you like never hanging out with your wife and be like, whatever, she loves me. Like, that's ridiculous to think. So it's ridiculous. But I think part of the problem here is we have to stop accepting people's excuses. We have to start calling people out that their excuses don't make sense, but not just in a personal attack. Like, just be like, okay, that doesn't make sense. How can we help you? How can we help this situation? How can we come to see the beauty or the fullness that Matt was talking about of Christ's church or of a relationship with Jesus, right? Yeah. Like, we have to stop accepting these excuses. Like, well, I don't go to church because, or I don't, for too long we've just accepted it, and now it's become an acceptable thing where people say, well, I don't go to church either, but I'm a Catholic.
Yeah. I think where we've lost faith is when we where we got those answers that Jesus loves you anyways, I think came from we stopped teaching about having a personal relationship with Jesus. Now it's starting to sound, but we started just catechizing and less teaching the relationship that you have with God, the relationship, because once you take that relationship away from God, now you're just learning a subject. And learning a subject, I mean, everyone can remember math, but do you remember how to solve the equation of a parabola or something? Of course, I have an idea about how that works. It's a shape of some sorts. There's X's and Y's involved. And then when someone asks you about it, you might say one of two things. Oh, I'm not an expert on the subject. Or, oh, you do. And then you have an answer, but it doesn't quite make sense and it's kind of made up. So those answers, I think, is what came from our religion classes, and people that are teaching religion or teaching the faith, and they don't quite have an answer. The church failed to hire knowledgeable people that have that faith life under wraps. Not hired, but have that faith taught to them. And they started grabbing warm bodies, that's when you have a warm body, just give an answer. They're giving whatever answer they want, but the church is not making sure that answer is in line with the church, as well as teaching that relationship.
Having a life as part of the Catholic Church, we're meant to live radical, holy lives, right? And sometimes you don't even see that from church leaders. No, I'm not trying to, stir the pot here or anything, but I'm just being honest. Like, sometimes you see even priests or bishops or religious, they're kind of living mediocre lives. There's nothing radical that's holy about them, right? And so from the top down, it gives this impression that you can do whatever you want or live however you want and still be part of the Catholic Church. And then, like you were saying too, then we have Catholic institutions who people receive salaries, working for a system that they call Catholic. I'm talking hospitals. I'm talking healthcare. I'm talking education. Schools. These are Catholic. Some of them have the name Catholic in them, and people earn big money. You look at a school board. People earn big money at the top of a school board that says Catholic on it, and not do anything to preserve what it actually means to be Catholic. So that has taught the rest of society that it doesn't matter. It's okay to be Catholic in name only.
Yeah.
So that's what surrounds us. That's what we're surrounded by. That's what we're hearing from. And it's not just these institutions. It happens sometimes also in the church.
100%. I can't tell you how many youth ministers I've known that have gotten hired. Now, it's great because youth ministers, when they're working in the church and they have a true heart, I would say I've seen them go from just a warm body into a faith-filled Catholic because they're working every day and they take their job seriously. I've seen some Catholic teachers do that through teaching classes and everything else. But I've seen the Catholic Church hire just a warm body to teach the youth. You know what I mean? And it's just, and you go, why is it doing that? I don't understand the process here. This is you need to have someone who's on fire and who loves God and has how do you introduce somebody to a friend if you don't know that friend?
It's because faith or religion is the only acceptable thing left that people without any credentials can speak about. Right?
Yeah.
That's acceptable. You can throw a warm body into a classroom to teach religion. You could throw a warm body to speak about Jesus. But what are their credentials? I hear horror stories from my students that their teachers teach them that Jesus is not God. Jesus is not God. From their Catholic school religion teacher. There's Catholic school teachers out there who skip teaching the Catholic faith altogether in order, like in a world's religion class, for example. So these are the things that are happening now, and there's this acceptable there's this thing that's being accepted that it's okay to do that. It's okay to pass over the Catholic Church, or it's okay not to be not to have any credentials in speaking about the faith. That's wrong, and we have to start calling it out. We have to, or else we're not going to go anywhere, right? Then you look at the life of everyday Catholics. It's like, well, I don't have to go to Mass every Sunday. Yes, you do.
I know.
Yes, you do.
There are rules about that, right?
Yeah. So we're going to go through rules? The bare minimum.
Okay,
Here
the bare
are the
minimum.
precepts of the church.
To call yourself Catholic.
Yes. So it is not just a piece of paper, a baptism certificate. That is the life of the. Yeah, that's the beginning of our Catholic faith, right? But the church has 5 precepts. They're called, and they are the bare minimum that if you are a Catholic that you have to follow. Right? These are the 5. Just like if Matt was actually a world class tennis player champion,
there'd be
he
some
would have
things
to practice.
Yep.
He would have to do certain exercises or
pay his membership to
memberships
some sort
whatever. Play in certain tournaments to get to the higher ones or whatever it might be. Okay,
to be classified.
Number 1 is you shall attend Mass on Sunday and holy days of obligation.
So that's every Sunday.
So that's every single Sunday. Remember, it is a mortal sin to not be at Mass on Sunday. It is a mortal sin, let me repeat that, to not be at Mass on Sunday unless there is a serious reason. Like if you are ill, that we don't want you there. If you are convalescing from an injury, or if you've been in an accident, if let's say, even if you are way out in the bush, let's say you're on a camping trip, you're in the middle of the bush, 3 or 4 hours from society or anything civil. We don't expect you to be at Mass, but we do expect you to tell your pastor the week before.
You're going to miss
ask for a dispensation.
It's funny that you say that, because we were up in Temagami and we were about 2 days travel into the bush, and we traveled. I remember waking up early and making it to a Sunday Mass in Temagami to make it to that Mass. And it was like hardcore paddling through a storm and everything just to make it to the Sunday
You
Mass.
must have smelled great when you got there.
It was one of those, like, we stood at the back and everybody from the back moved forward.
I'm bringing a priest on my next canoeing trip.
Yes.
Please.
Celebrate Mass there.
I'll be there. Yes.
Okay, so the first
Okay,
one, now,
so-
Holy Days of Obligation in Canada, it's different. Is different for every area, right? I mean,
Right.
for potential different countries and stuff. But specifically here in Canada, we have 2 specific days of obligation other than the Sundays.
Yeah.
Which is
Christmas Day
Christmas.
and New Year's Day.
and New Year's Day. So
yeah,
you
so
have
Christmas
to come
Day,
on
obviously the Feast of the Nativity. New Year's Day, the Feast of Mary.
January 1st.
Mother of God.
Yeah, so
Yes.
December 25th, January 1st. Okay.
That's right. Those are the 2
And then
obligations.
every Sunday.
And every single Sunday. I don't know how to get that across. So, let me repeat that again.
Yeah.
It is a mortal sin to miss Mass on Sunday, which means if you've committed a mortal sin, what happens before you go back to Mass and receive the
You
Eucharist?
gotta go to confession.
You have to go to confession. Okay, which leads us right into precept number 2. Okay, that was only number 1.
Yeah.
Precept number 2 is you shall confess your sins at least once a year. At least once a year. Why? This goes back to that paper you're showing everyone about your baptism, right? It continues the work of conversion that baptism gives us.
Of
right?
course. I confirmation. I mean, it's funny that you say this because these are the things that I'm thinking of. You're keeping you eat every day. You might work out every day to keep your body healthy.
Some of us.
Yeah. But I mean, but we eat to feed our bodies. We do things in order to be healthy physically, and we always say that. Then we talk about emotional health. We never talk about spiritual health, and I think that's what this is hitting the nail on the head here. Going to Mass on Sundays. It doesn't talk about receiving communion on Sundays. It talks about going to Mass on Sundays.
That's right.
And then it talks about going to confession. Those are so important for our spiritual self. And then
God bless you for saying that because it was like you knew what was coming next. Because what you just said leads right into number 3. You shall receive the sacrament of the Eucharist at least during the Easter season. So there is this mentality here, which is a very North American thing, where you have to receive the Eucharist every time you go to Mass.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like a right or you deserve it. Yeah.
Like I've told you guys this before, but when I was living in Europe and you go to Mass on Sunday, the church might be full of people, but maybe 15, 20% go up to receive the Eucharist. And that's just normal. People don't receive the Eucharist every Sunday because they know that they haven't gone to confession yet or whatever it might be.
They're still at Mass. But they haven't received.
That's right. So what you said there was good. Some people avoid Mass because they don't want to go to confession.
Yeah.
Still come to Mass.
Yeah.
Still come to Mass.
I think that we have to normalize the fact that you come to Mass and it's not that you receive, you can come to Mass and not receive communion.
You can come to Mass.
It feels like, well, if I'm not receiving communion, that's the whole point of going to Mass. So what's the point of going to Mass with it? No, you are still going to get the goodness and the graces from Mass. You are still going to hear the word of God. You're still going to, God can still speak to you. But if you're never turning on the radio, you'll never hear what's on the top hits. You know what I mean?
And just being present at the Mass.
Yeah.
The spiritual efficacy, Matt's favorite word, is still there.
Yeah, and again, that's my experience, and being received into the church as an adult. I went to Mass for 2 years before I actually received the Eucharist.
Yeah. You see, that's a perfect example because in the RCIA program, that's what happens. Yeah. You come to Mass for without receiving communion for almost a full year, potentially even longer, 2 years, and then.
And it's not just pending grace that when you hit this point, you're going to receive the grace from the Mass. That this is part of the process, part of the preparation.
Yeah.
So we got number 1, you shall attend Mass on Sunday and Holy Day of Obligations. Number 2, you shall confess your sins at least once a year. Number 3, you shall receive the sacrament of the Eucharist at least during the Easter season. Number 4, you shall observe the days of fasting and abstinence established by the church. Okay.
Wow.
Which is, we're in the season of Lent right now. And so the days of fasting and abstinence, there's 2 clear ones on the calendar. It's Ash Wednesday, which already passed, Good Friday, which is coming up eventually. So those are the days of fasting and abstinence.
But then every Friday
during Lent is a day of abstinence from meat, not fasting.
But but throughout the entire year, right?
Are identified as penitential days.
Penitential days. Okay, that's it. I was gonna say because one of the things that we've talked about before, but is like nowhere actually in Canada it came around or nowhere I could find anyways that we can not like the church teaches to use that sacrifice on Fridays to not eat meat. The church, the United States bishops has condensed that to specifically during Lent. That's what's going to happen. And then other Fridays throughout the year, you'll take on another form of penance if you can't.
Same in Canada.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't find it in Canada. That was the thing. It seemed to kind of be a tradition that I found anyways. It was kind of like slowly got adopted by Canadian, but I don't know. I couldn't find it anywhere in the Canadian bishops or anything else. But I mean, it's a tradition that we've adopted here. Of
course.
But it doesn't mean you're not doing stuff on Friday. It means you're still taking on that sacrifice every single Friday.
That's right. So it's true. Okay, number 5. You shall help to provide for the needs of the church. Okay,
Ooh.
Which means
pay your dues.
You're applying. Yeah, pay your tennis fees like Matt does. Yeah,
but not just.
Exactly.
That is, the needs of the church are way more than monetary. So active engagement in the life of the church, encompasses everything from participating in actual, programs that the church puts on, but also in the extended life of the church, in your families, in your communities, engaging with the people you meet at church.
We've talked about before, like providing for the needs of the church isn't, like you said, not monetary value necessarily.
It can be,
it can be for sure. But it's also ways of like, I look at with Knights of Columbus that I work with, we look at service, we look at spiritual side, we look at the service, and then we look at so how you help monetary, sure, yeah, you can give money, but then the second part of that is actually through doing service. If you don't have money, that's not a reason to not go to church, because you can't put money in that collection basket.
That's right.
You can still go and you can read at Mass. You can usher for Mass. You can still be
so many things to help with. So many things to help with. If
you have a Monday morning off or a Tuesday morning off, see what's going on in your parish level, or maybe that there is something that you could help with. Maybe there is a food for the needy, like a soup and salad or something like that. There is multiple different areas I know in our city, North Bay, but also in the Catholic Church at large, where they need volunteers on a regular basis. Go help.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, help with the spiritual side of things too. So maybe they're looking to throw a adoration night. Well, then go and support it. Go and, maybe they're doing, I don't know, confirmation prep or first communion prep. See how you can be helping there.
Yeah. There's a way that everyone can help.
100%.
Everyone can help. I look at the young people who help out in our parish.
Yeah.
We're not throwing a collection basket under their
students, all the students.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like they're helping in so many different ways. And same with older people, even with those with jobs. Some people just can't afford to meet all their bills. And so we're not saying you have to provide monetary necessarily. Like if you can, then yes. But if you can't, there's so many other ways to help the church. You know what? These are the 5 precepts of the church. Would it be unfair for Father Daniele to add a 6th precept?
Okay, go for it. So those are the 5.
Those are the 5
on paper
official Catholic Church precepts.
And the one that Father Daniele is going to suggest that the Vatican meet about next.
That's right.
And maybe the Synod.
Next time I get to meet the Pope, I'm going to say, hey, let's add a precept. Prayer. It's so simple. But if we're not praying, we're not growing in our faith. And so many people, this is the problem, I think. So many people fail to understand what the church teaches. Mm-hmm. So many people fail to understand why they should be at Mass, or why they should go to confession, why they should receive the Eucharist, why they should, do the other things. Because we're not praying. We're not dialoguing with God.
Yes.
And sometimes no fault of their own. Sometimes we don't know how. Remember we talked a couple episodes ago about how to pray. This stuff is impossible if we're not praying. And if we don't know how to pray, or we don't know where to start here, like how do I start going back to Mass on Sunday, or how do I go to confession? It's been 20 years or whatever it might be. Go and talk to your priest. Go and talk to someone who's at Mass. It's so simple. It's not, these barriers are not that difficult. And I'm telling you, that's what I was talking before about, calling people out on their excuses.
Yeah.
If people wanted to, they would do it. If people wanted to be at Mass, they would make arrangements to be at Mass. If people wanted to be back in the life of a Catholic, being a practicing Catholic, they would come. But we need to find, and for those people who are practicing Catholics who are watching today or listening, and you might know people in your family who are non-practicing Catholics, we have to pray.
Yeah,
we have to pray for them.
It comes down, you're just saying that. I was thinking to myself, there are many different places where I had to be a sitting participant, and I didn't want to be there, but I was there because of someone I loved. So, for instance, and I got to be honest, it always comes down to my kids, but like going to the grade 1 Christmas show of some sorts where I have to sit through the entire school putting on their concerts so I can watch my son for his 2 seconds of fame,
I was gonna say, yeah.
But I'm there, and the reason I'm there is because of someone I love and someone I know. If you're not doing your daily prayer, like I wouldn't just go to first of all, it would be creepy if I was just sitting there for a random concert or a bunch of schools. But if I was going there, I wouldn't go to one. There's no purpose. But because I'm there, because of someone I love, I'm there and I'm fully participating in it, whether it be a football game that my son's playing in or a hockey game or whatever. I'm fully invested in it because there's someone there that's participating that I love. And because of that, I get involved. You have to have that daily prayer time so you have someone on the other end, someone that you love that you're going to meet, you're going to see, and that's Christ, right? Like you got to have that daily relationship with him. Otherwise, you are going to be bored. You're not going to get anything out of it. So that prayer, I like that prayer one. That's a good one.
Thank you. Thank you. Like I said,
I would agree. You can sign my name to that petition.
But honestly, let's start doing that. In conversations with people, I see people all the time at the grocery store, on the weekend or after the weekend, and they say, I say, I haven't seen you in a while. It's been a while since I've seen you at church. We've been busy.
Yeah.
Like doing what? What is so busy in your life that 1 hour to the Lord? And we have all these various times for masses. Like if it was important to us, we would make the time to be at Mass. So we have to call out people who are living the name Catholic, who aren't actually living the faith, the Catholic faith,
and approach them in love.
Absolutely. Yeah. But to guide them, to come to live a life of faith. Because if not, we're just going to keep perpetuating that it's okay to be Catholic in name, Catholic on paper, as you say, and not Catholic in action, like St. James, like you said at the very beginning of this episode.
Yeah, I think the analogy of marriage that you used at the beginning is pretty fitting. And there's a relationship there that needs to be reclaimed, that needs to be realized. No one would say, I'm still married, or haven't spoken to their spouse in 10 years, or something like that. That there is context there for them to come back. There is a connection there that they're always welcome back.
Welcome
exactly.
home.
The Lord is welcoming people back, and so that's the Lord is extending his arm, extending his heart. He's welcoming people back. So let's try and help get our brothers and sisters who have fallen away from the church back to our fold, so that we can really celebrate in the fullness of faith. It's beautiful when the church is full. It's beautiful when you can talk to other Catholics. It's beautiful when we're all trying to live radically holy and faith-filled lives. Okay, that's it. We're gone way past our time. So this was a good discussion. If people want to leave their comments or disagreements or anything you want to add, you can do so by emailing us at thecatholicbuzzpodcast@gmail.com. You can leave a comment right on our YouTube channel or on Facebook and Instagram. My name is Father Daniele, and for Josh Sullivan and Matt Van Milligan, you've been watching or listening to The Catholic Buzz. We'll see you next time.